Good morning. Really happy to be here. It's an absolutely beautiful day in Austin. This is a live feed of what it looks like, from our area looking towards Austin. And if you look really, really closely, you got the southeast that way, the northeast that way. If you look really, really closely, you can see that the sun is also shining on Wrigley Field in Chicago. Because this is the night where we're going to just start turning things around and get those New York people under control, okay? We hope. And if you're a New York fan, nothing against you. It's just, I am from Chicago. I can't, it's been 107 years, We can't wait another 107 years. I don't have it in me. But anyway, this is the state of the district. Every time we do this, we always like to make sure we introduce, whoops. Yes, we make, hang on, it's doing some interesting things. Sure enough, we're on film. And now we'll do some interesting things. I'd like to introduce any board members that are here. We do have two board members here, two school board members. Julia's here and Ellen is here. A little bit about board members and all that in general. I was on a school board north of Chicago for 9 years. Ellen's been on a school board for 15. 9 years. And took all my hair off just from doing it. It was really, it can be a very rough job. But I also think it can be a fulfilling job for no pay. They are really your elected representatives that try to kind of give the sense of what does this community expect and want in their schools. And I want you to kind of keep that in mind. And they do a lot of meetings. A lot of the slides you'll see tonight, well, sections of the slides you'll see tonight are really abbreviated presentations that we did with the board when we were trying to talk through some things and trying to decide what direction we were going to go. Does that make sense? So it'll be a flyover a little bit, but hopefully it'll help. So how many of you last year saw either a state of the district or a bond presentation? Okay. And those of you who didn't, how many of you know who that is? Okay. If you remember last year, that was my image of the district. And when I first got here that I thought about it. Looks really, really, really good, right? Great actor, good, talented guy, but he had a little problem with his hand. And I'm changing it a little bit this year after a little time here, and I go from here that, yeah, we really are a really good district. We really are. And you can look at all the numbers and everything else, you'll come to that conclusion. But then I go to this picture. Okay? Now we have, if you notice, George is still having a little trouble with his hand. We're not absolutely perfect, but we're getting a little better. His hand was in a little worse shape, right hand, now it's his left hand, but it's not quite as injured. And you're going to see this slide pop up as I go through different things today, but that's really kind of where my theme is going to be. We're really good. We're not perfect, and we're getting a little bit better, okay? So with that said, I'd like to go to something I showed last year that I still believe, and if I, as long as I'm coming to these things or doing these things, these will probably be 6 things that I like to keep in my mind that are really important for a stable, great school district. And the first one is what I think is most important, is you must be able to attract and retain high-quality staff. I mean, you can look at all the information out there. If you don't have great teachers in front of kids, it just doesn't matter what else you're doing. You have to have great teachers in front of kids, and I do believe that. You need some good principals once in a while and all that kind of stuff, but you really need great teachers in front of kids. Second, you want to have reasonable class sizes, okay? I think we all agree on. We may not agree on the exact number, but we all know that there's some numbers that are too big, right? We also, I believe, you want to support your programs. Whatever you're doing, try to do it well. You're putting in a new reading program, try to put it in well. You're doing technology, try to do it well. Just try to, make things work. Because if you don't have those supports for the teachers, it just makes their lives much harder. Another thing I believe is you have to have good facilities. Decent facilities. You want your kids in a safe environment, you want it climate controlled, you want a good building. Other 2 things, sometimes not as interesting to a lot of people, but they are important. A bus doesn't go without gasoline, diesel, or propane. It needs something in it. And you do need a budget. You'd like your budget to be balanced each year if you can pull it off. And you'd like to have a little money in the bank in case you need it. And in our case, sometimes the taxes don't come in on even rates, and we basically have payroll going out, in different ways. and we don't want to borrow money. Most people will tell you in schools you want to have about 25% in the bank, which is 3 months operating. In our situation, with our budget, that would be approximately $18 million. Okay? Keep the number 18 million in your head, because I'm going to come back to that at a certain point. Okay? So those 6 things I really do believe are things that I'd like to see always happening. Is that okay? Okay. Keep that in mind. I always like to talk about just some highlights. I'll just give you some quick things about the district, and then I'll talk about some challenges and some different things I'd like to talk to you about, okay? So some highlights. First of all, a lot of the data we give you is about Westlake High School, because often that's where the numbers are, and that's where you have the big comparisons, particularly when you're talking across the state and nation, okay? But my mom was a first grade teacher, and I was a high school teacher, and she said, nothing good happens here unless a lot of good things have happened here along the way. So if you see something that is, something very positive, we're talking about Westlake High School, it's also about Eanes Elementary and about our 2 middle schools and everyone else. They're all in it together. I'm going to fly through these numbers. I'll go through any of these. I'll come back to anything later. That was the last SAT that we had reported. You'll see where we are with the state. You'll see where we are with the country. I'll give you some other type comparisons in a minute. That's the ACT, the last one. Again, you can see state and country. We had 4 students. We're going to actually recognize these kids tonight. 1 had a perfect score on the SAT, 3 on the ACT. You know I did. I had a perfect score on the ACT and SAT. I'm sure most of the people in this room did too. It's very easy to do that. I'm teasing. I was lucky I found the room where they were giving the ACT. But these kids are pretty amazing. We are in a group of schools which we call the 21st Century Consortium, because sometimes we want to compare ourselves and benchmark ourselves against some other schools that are similar to us. These are some of the schools that we benchmark with. Palo Alto in California and Manhattan Beach, Maricosa High School in California. In Texas, Highland Park out of Dallas and us. Minnesota, Edina. In Nebraska, West Side outside of Omaha. In the Chicago area, New Trier, just north of Chicago. And some of you who may know those areas, you may know 1 or 2 of those areas, you'll know that if you walked into their high schools, they would be very, very similar to ours. And sometimes we like to see, well, how are we doing compared to them? We actually give a common survey to our seniors as they graduate to kind of see, okay, how do you think you did? And we kind of look at our numbers and see where can we improve, where can they improve. And it's a really great conversation. But when we look at the number of National Merit finalists and these different categories, we're right in there with those schools. And that's pretty impressive, because those are some of the top-rated schools in the country in terms of public schools. I always like to show this a little bit. With this, again, was a presentation to the board, probably lasted 25, 30 minutes at least, and you're getting the short version, just a couple slides. There are 4 areas that they have accountability indexes on in the state test. What I always like to know is, how are we doing compared to what we think are the best districts and best high schools in Texas? So I asked Bill Bechtel, who's our deputy superintendent who knows Texas, I said, tell me, what are the best districts, school districts in Texas? And he listed these on the left. Now, I trust him on this, okay? Some of you who are longtime Texas probably know some of those districts. Those are considered pretty good districts. Our scores on the last test in 2015 are in yellow across the top. And would I look just from a 50,000 foot view, how do we compare with these districts? And I would look at it and say, we're definitely in the ballpark with pretty much all of them. There's not one area where I would say we're way out of line in terms of being low. In some cases, we're pretty high. The second place I look is the high school, because a lot of our kids go through our whole system. And according to Bill, he picked out, now sometimes you're picking out a high school in some of these districts. And you'll see these are some of the high schools that he picked out. And again, we're in yellow, right? You can see the other schools. One thing that sometimes is a little confusing, some of these schools that have 2 numbers with a slash in between, what that is about is they may have a 9th grade campus that's not connected and then a 10-12, or they may have a 9-10 and a 10-12 campus. And what they do in those situations is they give them 2 scores. So you really would have to average those 2 in a way to kind of have it compared to one of our scores. But again, when I looked at this with Bill, and when we shared it with the board, my message was, we're right there. We are right there, okay? When you have high test scores, it leads to different people noticing it and putting you in different news situations, different rating agencies. I don't worry that much about this. I really don't. I think it's nice when you get mentioned in a positive way, but at the same time, they have different criteria. Some focus on AP, some focus on SAT, some ACT. Some actually say, how big is your low-income population and how are you moving them? So some of the criteria doesn't even work for us in some ways. So it's kind of interesting with that. But it is nice to be on those lists. We have about 99% of our kids accepted directly into college, and that's good. It breaks down basically this way. And there's something I'd like to really start doing is start tracking where our kids are 1 year out. I think that's an important thing to know. And where are they 5 years out? And I'd like to try to get some longitudinal data on that, because I think that's important. I will tell you this too, and I know this is going to sound probably terrible saying here. What I think is extremely important in my life when I think of kids and moving on in their lives is that they're productive and they're happy. I really got to get that productive and happy. There is a chance for some kids that doesn't mean college. It really is, and that's okay in my mind. I think we need to accept that a little bit. Most of our kids will go to college, so we are going to prepare them for that, but it is not the end of the world in my mind if a kid chooses a different path, as long as they are getting to that productive and happy stage. That's okay. Again, the test scores, how our schools are perceived, leads to a couple other nice things. We had approximately $28.8 million that was awarded to last year's senior class in terms of scholarships. That's quite a bit. Co-curriculars, extracurriculars are also important. I'll just show you a few data points here. I share the story. When I went to high school, the only thing that saved me was the fact that I was the star quarterback of the football team. As I was getting my perfect score on the ACT and SAT, right? No, I was not on the football team. But I could play a pretty good tenor sax. And that was my way to connect with a group of kids. And it was a way to connect with an adult who kind of watched over me. And don't discount co-curriculars in any way. They really do have some value in our system, especially when you get to a big high school or a big middle school. Sometimes that's where people find their group of kids to hang with, and where they find some of their identity and where they explore some of their passions. And that's good. We have a great cheerleading team. I've been told, I look at them, they're jumping all over the place. They look pretty darn good. We do pretty well in a lot of sports. We're having a good football season this year. Here are some individuals. You can see we do pretty well, across the state. So I just want to mention that we do have some positive things happening in that domain. 2 things on this really quickly. First of all, Apple Distinguished Educators, that's really rare. I don't know if you know how rare that is to get that. That's a real honor. And these kids on this iPad Palooza Film Festival, the kid who won last year was a junior from Barrington High School. One of the best kids I've ever seen in using film. And he put in this year, I think he was runner-up this year, but he was runner-up as an elementary kid. So pretty darn good for those kids. And I think a lot of the things we talk about are because we have great kids, and we have great schools, and we have great staff. And I use this picture of this man. He is an excellent AP physics teacher, and he's been nominated for award just as an example of one of our teachers out there. We also have, like I said, in that co-curricular domain, and I don't know if you know who this person is, Al Bennett, but he was named Coach of the Year in the nation. And it's interesting when I talk to parents of kids who are on his team, it's not how many wins, that he has 900 wins or whatever number it might be, it's how he develops character in their daughter. in their daughters. It's just amazing what this man can do. We do thank EEF, Wally's here, for their help in helping us develop staff and paying for master's degrees or helping pay for master's degrees through the PTEP program is important. EEF gave us $1.6 million last year, or a little actually more than that, almost 1.7. That is extremely helpful to our budget, which we'll talk about a little later, but I want to make sure you know that we do appreciate that. Remember those 6 things? This is one of them. Give just a minute or two on it. One thing that did happen last year is the bond passed, and that was a good thing. I don't have to do 37 bond presentations this year or whatever, but that isn't why it's a good thing, because of keeping me from doing presentations. But it's a good thing because when we need to fix something, if we do have to fix something, we can take some money from the bond and get it fixed or get it updated without having to pull that money from the money that would be paid for teachers and salaries and those types of things. And we haven't gotten a lot done yet. Some of the things like the middle school additions take time to plan. Architects have to draw it up. It's going to take a little time. There's probably just a few things we did. I'm a little embarrassed to show this, but we were able to replace the fields at the football stadium quickly. And I actually was just in the Performing Arts Center at the high school, and they just replaced, Jeff knows this, they just replaced the sound system there. It is incredible. They were playing a song by Nora Jones or something, and it was like just absolutely amazing when I was listening to them test the system. The kids are going to really enjoy that. Back to that picture, I'm shifting. We're really good. We're getting a little better. Still got some things to work on. Financials, just a few things for you to know. Last year when I was talking to you, we were looking at a picture, really worried about trying to balance the budget and keep a fund balance. And the money piece of schools does have some importance. This is a sheet that is really back from March of last year. And at one point we had long conversations with the board about this. And you don't have to look at everything, but you can look at, we were anticipating trying to give a salary increase of about 1.5%, look there. And we were looking down here at what our deficits projected out to be were. And they were looking like 5.7, 6.3, 6.6, 6.6. Now, we're lucky, to some degree, that, and Ellen was part of this, boards in the past built up that fund balance so that we would have some opportunities to adjust if we needed to adjust. But if you are starting with a little over 30-something here, right, and you go down by about 6 million, 6 million, 6 million, okay, you're going down quickly. And remember that number I told you to remember that you don't really want to go under, which was 18. So if you start a little over 30 and you're going 666, which again, you never want to go 666. It's bad omen, okay? But you don't want to be drawing from your fund balance that fast. It's good that you have it. It's good that you can do that and do it in wise ways and make wise decisions, but you can't do it forever. So the board had long conversations because that's what our fund balance graph looked like if we were drawing it out at that rate. The red line is that like 18 million you don't want to go under, right? And the blue line is how much you would have in the fund balance. It was going down at a pretty rapid rate. So we said, we can't keep going at like this rate. We have to think about that. We made some adjustments, and we basically went to a plan, and this is the plan we're following right now, which is roughly, in my mind, called a 3-2-1 plan. So by the time we get to 18, 19, we will have a balanced budget and still have over $18 million in the fund balance. We'll actually have a little leeway there, okay? So we have choices to kind of play with along the way. And if you do that, that's your graph, which is what you really would like it to be. The blue line and the red line running fairly parallel to one another. Now, embedded in that were a couple of things. One, to accomplish what we wanted to do in certain areas, we will probably wind up using, I still think it'll be around 3 million this year. I think it'll be 3-2-1. But we had conversations. We let it go up, creep up just a little bit for some strategic purposes. We delayed salaries. We were one of the last school districts in the central area here to approve salary increase because we were watching what was going on with our assessed evaluation and trying to make sure what we could do for staff. the board said if we had additional funds became available from any action from the state or local or anything, it would be first for salary benefits, second for additional staffing to help you with maintaining and keeping class sizes reasonable, and third, to work for any future deficit reduction. Okay? So when we look at this picture, you know, the 3-2-1 is getting us better. It's not going down 6 million each year, so that feels a little bit better. And remember, I told you that's one of my major goals, and I think the board, when I tell you what they did, they think it's a major goal too. We last year, this was Teacher of the Year last year in our district, we had an Academy Awards theme for convocation, so everyone was dressed up. I even wore a tux. I don't get into tuxes very often, but I got into one, and it was a lot of fun. But you do need to have a competitive salary structure in order to keep people in your system. So at one point the board said, well, where are we with the 12 school districts in our area? Where are we in terms of them? Where are we at first-year teachers, 5-year teachers, 10-year teachers, and 20-year teachers? Does that make sense? Just data to look at. So we said if we give no raise this year, which we contemplated a little bit, we give no raise, where will we be with first-year teachers out of 12? And we would be in 12th place. So we said, well, where would we be with 5 years in? Where would they be out of 12? And we said 12th place. And then we said, okay, 10-year teachers. A little better, 7th place. And let's go 20-year teachers, 6th place. And that led to another long conversation with the board. And credit to Ellen, really, on this, because she said, you know, I kind of just, let's stop with the numbers. What do we want? What's, you know, and I think we all want to pay our teachers probably number one of everybody, and we would like to be as high as we could be. We're trying to balance those other things as well. And so we did have a long conversation about what do we want. And we made a decision, at least, you know, and this can change over time, but we said, here's where we'd like to be. First-year teachers, we want to at least tie Lake Travis. At least tie Lake Travis. Whatever they do, we want to be at least where they are. Now, Friday night when we play Lake Travis, we don't want to tie them. Okay, we want to beat them, but that's a different situation. At 5 years, you got to know that, because by the way, at the first year level, we have great recruiting power in a sense, because people do want to work in this district. I mean, this really is a great district for lots of reasons. And you're a first-year teacher. If you had a choice of all those districts, we're probably number one on your list. Okay, if you really think about that. But year 5, we get to know them a little bit. We want to be more toward the middle of the pack. Okay? At year 10 and 20, we'd like our teachers to feel if you stay with us and you work with us, we want to be in the top quartile. That makes sense? Now, to do that, we couldn't go 3-2-1. We actually had to go a little bit higher than 3-2-1. We had to go about $150,000 higher when all was said and done in our budgeting. So the board discussed that. It was said we could do that because we feel that's important. So by using that much of the fund balance and trying to keep everything else steady, we basically were able to move our position a little bit. It wound up being a 2.8% raise. That's average of averages. And for first-year teachers, here's where we rank. We're tied with Lake Travis. Okay? For 5th-year teachers, basically middle of the pack. For 10 years out, top quartile. For 20 years out, top quartile. We decided to go 30 years out, even though the data gets a little tricky because some people don't have scales going out there. But at 30 years out, top quartile. And then we said also, what did all these other districts do last year in terms of percentages? And that's what they did last year. Okay? Now remember, if we would have froze salaries, we would have been at 0. That's would have been our position. If we would have been at 1.5, which was in our early projections, we would have been at the bottom of the list. And by the way, just so everyone knows, when we give a like all these districts, when they gave a 2.8% increase, for anyone in TRS, which is almost the vast majority, they immediately lost 0.5 because their contribution to TRS increased last year by 0.5. So 2.8 really equates to roughly 2.3. but that's for everybody on the list. So if you're at 0, you're basically offering negative 0.5. You understand where I'm going? So a lot of conversation, but the goal in all of that was really focused on that attracting and retaining. I'm almost done, I promise. Okay, and then I'll answer any questions you have.
What is the TR? We were trying to figure out what
TRS, Teacher Retirement System. I'm
Okay.
sorry,
No, it's
Teacher
okay.
Retirement System. I'm sorry. Some of these acronyms, we live them all the time, so I don't even think about them, but that's what it means, okay? So, we could have been in 12th place. We're tied with Lake Travis. You know, we're moving in the top, so we're getting a little better. A couple opportunities I just want to mention to you, and then I'll just answer any questions for you. We do have a district improvement plan that we work on every year. It basically has had the same 3 major goals that are hard to argue with. I'll just put all 3 up there quickly. Sure, no one's going to object highly to any of these. It's how you get them done is the trick, okay? But the first one is we want kids to achieve academically in a safe and supportive environment. I read the whole thing, but that's what it says. I think we believe in that. We want to efficiently use our resources, right? And we want to develop exemplary employees. We want to develop people. Okay? Can't argue, it's hard to argue with that. We want to be in a situation where we engage with the community. Okay? Well, before I got here, there was this thing called the wheel that they talk about. What do you want in a graduate? This is some of the language that's used there. Think about your own child when they're getting out of Westlake High School. Now, tell me, okay, I do not want them to be well-rounded. I do not want them to be a lifelong learner. I do not want them to be healthy. I mean, these are things you want. And I really, honestly, I like this one a lot, effective communicator. And that's in all types of ways that people communicate. That is so important. You cannot be a good communicator unless you can be a good critical thinker and you can connect with people and relationships. I do think that's extremely important. But I think there's nothing here that I don't think we would not want. Couple things we are doing a little different this year. We have a digital learning task force that's out there. We're trying to make decisions on what we should be doing with technology. You have to have a balance. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you shouldn't have it. I get that. What device do you use at the high school level? What device do you use in kindergarten? Maybe they're different. We're using the same right now, but maybe they are different. So those conversations are taking place. We have a bond oversight committee, worked really well on the last bond. It was a great way to vet, because sometimes things change along the way, and you gotta make a little adjustment. This is a group of citizens that helps us kind of analyze that, give their opinions to the board, as an advisory group to the board. We have a revenue generating task force, trying to get George's hand a little better. This was done in, I think, 2004, okay? I just gotta look to Ellen for the dates. And they did come up with some good ideas. We now have another group, it's about 28-ish people, okay, that are kind of working on that. They're gonna present what they think we could possibly do to the board in December. So we're prior to the budget cycling process as we get into January, February. Couple things that you at least know what I'm talking about or in a short conversation. This was a good thing. This was a good thing. 65% approval rate, that was a good thing. 3-2-1 strategy, you know what I mean if I say 3-2-1, right? Just kind of makes some sense. Try to keep it simple, if we can keep it simple. Eanes Educational Foundation, we usually put projections of them raising about 5% more money each year. They've been raising somewhere between 8 and 12 each year. They have an ambitious goal this year to raise even more than that percentage. But for budgeting purposes, we're kind of conservative. They do help us though. If we did not have the $1.65 million, it would have been a much more difficult conversation when we were talking about compensation and when we were talking about additional staffing. It would have been a really hard conversation. Revenue generating task force, we're hoping, and there is this little thing called the lawsuit that's going on in Texas that the lower court said our system is unconstitutional in funding schools. Supreme Court heard arguments. We're expecting a ruling sometime in 2016. Exactly when, that's up to them. Some people said January, some people now are saying they're going to wait till the primary's over for political reasons. I don't know, but that could have an effect. Back when they were talking about the budgeting and funding of schools in the last legislative session, Representative Aycock had a plan, And if his plan would have come into place, we would have received somewhere between $4 and $5 million extra revenue per year. That would have changed our graphs quickly and made a lot of our decisions a lot easier. Some people feel that the Supreme Court upholds the ruling. That may be the first place they go to look at his plan to see, and they are actually still holding several $1 billion that they have not allocated, which is really interesting. It's very interesting. So that's, I always like to leave a picture. I always like to hang out with good-looking people, hang out with George, for me. And I hope you understand kind of where I'm going with that idea. We are really good. We're not perfect. I think we're getting better.